Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's good to be home. No, it really is. You know, home is where your values are set. Home is where you learn about life, and you learn what to respect. And you know, I've had the great opportunity, because of the generous people of the state of Delaware and the upbringing of my family in Scranton, to be exposed to an awful lot of so-called important people. I've met, and the press here, I can say this without fear of contradiction, every major world leader in the past 35 years. I know virtually all the major world leaders today by their first names. I've been doing this for a long time. As a consequence, I've been introduced in palaces and congresses and the UN by some very, very important people. But I've never been introduced by a more dignified, decent, honorable American than I just was by Sarah. You know, my mother had an expression, Jean Finnegan Biden. She'd say, courage is the greatest virtue, because without courage, you cannot love with abandon. Without courage, you cannot love with abandon. It takes courage to love. It takes courage to reach out. It takes courage to stand up knowing that there are people who share or act like Trump. No, this is not looking for a boo or a clap or a shout. This is really serious. It takes courage knowing that whether you're a woman who's been victimized, whether you suffer from a disability, whether you stutter or you're poor or you have some disfigurement. It takes courage to stand up knowing there'll be people doing and saying things like the kind of things that Donald Trump has said. I hadn't planned on saying this. My dad, who went to prep and went to school here in Scranton, not here, I'm in Wilkes-Barre, but in Scranton. My dad used to say two things as long as I can remember, all my siblings. When we left Scranton in '53 because there wasn't a lot of work, I remember my dad making what I call the longest walk any parent has to make. And a lot of people made it in this Great Recession here in this area and in my home state. Up a short flight of stairs to the child's bedroom to say, honey, you can't go back to St. Paul's next year. You can't play on this ball team. You can't, because daddy's going to lose his house. Or in my dad's case, walking up my grandfather Finnegan's house on North Washington Avenue, saying, honey, you're going to live with grandmom and grandpop. Actually, my grandmom had passed by then, actually, with your grandpa. And, but I'll be back. I'll be back in a year. I'll come home almost every week. And I remember saying it's only 157 miles. I thought that was like going to the moon. He said, but there's a lot of good jobs down in Wilmington, honey, where Uncle Frank is. And when I get enough, we'll put everything together and bring you and Mom, your sister and your brother down to Wilmington. It'll be okay. When he said that, it was going to be okay. He meant it. He believed it. Because there used to be a basic bargain in this country. The bargain was, if you participated in an enterprise that you contributed to and it did well, you got to share in the benefits of that participation. But that's changed. That's changed. Today, there's a study done between 2003 and 2013. There are 444 companies who remained in the Fortune 500 company list. They made $2.7 trillion, which is good for the economy and should be good for everyone else. But 54% of that profit that they made went to buying back their own stock, which they paid themselves with. 37% went to their shareholders, and only 9% went to the people who worked there, or to expansion, or to research and development. The bargain that used to exist between Democrats and Republicans from the end of the Depression through the beginning of the Bush administration has been broken. And now the grand old party, and it is a grand old party. It's been an incredible party, the Republican Party. The grand old party is being led by a man who says, and I say to all the people in Luzerne County who are frustrated and angry and thinking of voting for Donald Trump, I say to them, listen to what the man has said and what he has done. He has said, quote, workers make too much money. No, and he means it. He means it. He has proposed a tax proposal that will generate over $9 trillion in tax cuts to people basically in the top 1% and increase taxes on middle-class people. He, along with Senator Toomey, have voted for budgets, Republican budgets have been voted on in the House and the Senate, that call for voucherizing Medicare, fancy word for saying give folks on Medicare less money to care for themselves. Privatizing Social Security. Eliminating what Brock and I have worked so damn hard to do, college assistance and college aid. Cutting Pell Grants. Eliminating, for you parents out there struggling to keep your kids in school, the $2,500 a year tax credit for each child you have in college. I'm talking about when he fired or stiffed, as Hillary said, all his workers. Remember what he said? He said, maybe they weren't doing the job I liked. My dad used to talk about the greatest sin anyone could commit, and he meant it. My cousins are here and my neighbors from North Washington Avenue. He used to say the greatest sin you could commit is the abuse of power. Economic power, political power. He said the cardinal sin, because I'm so passionate about the Violence Against Women Act that I wrote, everybody thinks maybe my mother was victimized or maybe my sister or someone close to me. No, it was my father who talked about the cardinal sin of all sins was for a man to raise his hand to a woman or a child. But think about it. When you see abuse of power, economic or political, it usually runs the gambit. Think of the abuse of power that has been exercised by the Republican nominee. I have not wanted to get into, if you notice in the national press, talking about Trump's behavior, his personal behavior. But what he said he did and does is a textbook definition of sexual assault. And think about this. But it's more than that. He said, because I'm famous, because I'm a star, because I'm a billionaire, I can do things other people can't. What a disgusting assertion for anyone to make. The press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school, I could take him behind the gym. That's what I wish. Look, guys. Look, guys, I want you to take a look out there. I want the people listening in Luzerne County. Think about the things that matter to you. A job, being treated with dignity. Think about whether or not you're able to live a middle-class life. My definition of middle class is not a number. I have a lot of brilliant economists work for me. They'll say it's $51,200 or $53,400. It's not. It's an ideal. To be middle class means you can send your kid to a local park and know they'll come home safely. It means being able to send them to a high school that if they do well, you can get them to college. It's being able to own your own home and not have to rent it. It's about being able to take care of your geriatric mom or dad when the other one passes and hope your children never have to take care of you. That's what middle class means. That's how we were raised in Luzerne County. That's how we were raised in Lackawanna County. That's who we are. I know I'm referred to as middle-class Joe, and in Washington, that's not meant as a compliment. It means you're not sophisticated, but I'm pretty damn sophisticated about the middle class. And I know when the middle class does well, the wealthy do very well, and the poor have a way up. Let's think about this. For every crisis in the last century, including from happening in other democratic countries, there's more stability here than anywhere else. Why? Because we have a growing middle class, because there was this bargain that people believed in, like my father. It'll be okay. When Barack and I took office, we had one objective, and I literally mean this. And it was a phrase I used to him when I asked him whether he really meant what he said when he asked me to join him. The objective is to have every single father and mother be able to look in their eye of their child and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Mean they can do that. And folks, name me a single thing Trump is offering. Well, thank you, but think about this. And look, I couldn't understand. I was going up to the Kennedy School to meet with a group of 6 or 7 of the leading cancer hospitals in the world and to talk to them. And then I went off to New Hampshire to campaign for a really good friend of mine. And she's running for the United States Senate, the present governor. And I couldn't understand. I was sitting with my staff in Air Force Two in the cabin. And I really, this makes me, it happens to you guys sometimes. Something was really eating at me about this election. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I finally figured it out. Elections are supposed to be about a competition of ideas. So that and they're all tough, they can be tough and mean. I'm not suggesting they're all sweet and lullabies. But they're usually about some ideas so that the purpose in a democracy of an election is to litigate what you say you want to do, so that if you're elected, you start off with a consensus among the public as to being able to do what you said you wanted to do. And what's really angered me is Trump's behavior. Trump's actions have been so outrageous, there has been no time for the press to be able to cover the stuff that really matters. The press is good. It's not the press's fault. But when he says the things he says, it occupies, for example, in this administration with the help of Bobby, not a joke, we have the highest graduation rates in American history. More people are graduating from African-American neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods than ever before. Now, no, that's good. But in ordinary times in a campaign, that would be the headline in any paper in America. But it's crowded out by this crudeness. It's crowded out by this dumbing down of the American dialogue because of this guy. Because I want people to know the Hillary I know. I've known her for over 40 years. I know her heart. I know her vulnerabilities like she does mine. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a woman who has been battered. Now, she's not complaining, But here's the deal. there's also a double standard out there for men and women. I was recently in New Hampshire, and I was campaigning in a large crowd of people, and a fellow who was pushing me earlier to run for president had two beautiful little boys with him, one about 15 months old, and he had him in a pouch carrying him. And he yelled, "Joe, Joe." And he took the little baby, and he handed it to me. This little blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby, he said, "Joe, his name is Bo." Named after your son. Now, here's the point. I started to cry. And the press said, well, that's because Joe Biden is just a decent, honorable father. But if Hillary did that, she'd be accused of playing the woman's card. I could give you thousands of examples. So it's not a surprise this generous woman I know has closed up, is unwilling many times to show her heart. But she gets it, guys. I want the public knowing the Hillary I know. For example, you know, I like you, I moved from Scranton, I moved to a little town called Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town. Then I lived not far from there in a lovely home, a middle-class neighborhood, a 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, split-level house. Was wonderful. We thought we were doing just fine. 4 kids and my grandpop after my grandmom died. We didn't think there was any problem. And I did pretty well in school. When I went to the equivalent of the Scranton Prep, called Archmere Academy, a working class but very, very challenging academic school. And I was a pretty good athlete. I was a high scorer, actually the run-up high scorer in my state. I was a good baseball player. I got scholarships. And I got an offer, a grant and aid, to go to Amherst University. I went to Delaware, which I'm very proud of, but I wanted to go to Amherst, a small school. And they don't give athletic scholarships, they give grants and aids. And even with the grant and aid, I couldn't get enough money to go. And then they said, well, maybe I could work in the dining hall. And my father, who was a dignified man, said, my son's not going to be waiting on any rich kids to go to college. I won't let you. I said, Dad, it's not like that. He said, no, we'll get the money. And he ran an automobile agency. And this is about Hillary, and I'll stop. He ran an automobile agency. Didn't own it, ran it. And the great thing about having a dad who runs an automobile agency, you always get a new car for the prom. For real. Not a joke. And by the way, watch Jay Leno's Garage. You'll understand what I'm talking about. So, after my baseball game in this little steel town, Claymont, Delaware, my dad's agency was down in Newark, Delaware, where the university is, about a 20-mile drive. And I got my 51 Plymouth with bath towels as seat covers, and my uniform still on. I blew down to Porter Chevrolet to pick up, it was the Chrysler D103 at the time. It was a beautiful car that he had Simonized for me. And I pulled my car in the usual spot. I would pull it in and ran in with my uniform on, my spikes in my hands, and said, Mary, where's Dad? She said, oh, honey, he's out in the lane going into the repair shop. My dad was a very dignified man, extremely well, the most often used phrase about my dad, he was graceful. And I walked through the door and I looked and saw him in the alley there, the road. And he was pacing back and forth. And my word is abiding, this is a true story. Pacing back, and he looked up and he looked at me and said, Joey, oh, Joey, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. And I thought this before cell phones, I thought something happened to my mom or one of my 2 brothers or my sister. I said, Dad, what's the matter? And he came over and had my shoulder and he said, honey, I'm so damn ashamed. I went to the bank today. They won't lend me the money to send you to school, honey. I am so ashamed. This isn't just about what this economy is doing to not getting a bright kid to college. It's about the dignity and respect your parents should be treated with. It's about their ability or inability in a circumstance to not be able to deliver something they should be able to do for their children. Hillary gets it. It's a lot more than just the economy. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to provide parents as best we can the ability to do the one thing they pray, that Bobby helped do with the act we just talked about, is let a parent be able to do something to help a child that has a problem or an opportunity. That's why Hillary, from the time she got out of school, worked for the Children's Defense Fund. That's what motivates Hillary Clinton. She wasn't joking. The only time I saw her open up, and I wish she could do more of it, was at the convention, or in the first debate, talking about how her grandfather worked at the silk mill for 50 years in Scranton, and how her dad, when he, quote, said, maybe the workers I didn't pay didn't do a good enough job, she said, I'm glad my dad bending over a silk screen doing draperies never worked for you. Folks, dignity matters. How you treat people and how. My dad used to say, I don't expect the government to solve my problem, but at least expect them to understand my problem. Just understand my problem. We can't solve all the problems, but we can sure do a hell of a lot better than we're doing now. And ladies and gentlemen, if we let Donald Trump somehow even get a significant minority in the vote, it says things to the rest of the world about us that are dangerous. I've traveled over 1,200,000 miles as Vice President of the United States. I go because I go to meet with heads of state, because when I speak to them, I speak for the President. I'm not the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense. They never have to wonder what I say is exactly what the President will do, because we have worked it out, and I have his confidence. And everywhere I go, this is not hyperbole, everywhere I go, I get asked by world leaders, this can't be true, is it? I was in Australia, and I'll end with this. I was in Australia with the Prime Minister had been re-elected by a smaller, a more narrow margin, talking about what we're going to do about our rebalancing and dealing with China and the American fleet. And I got a phone call from the former defense minister, but now the president of Latvia, say I have to come to the Baltic states, come back to speak with the presidents of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And they want me to make an address to all three nations, nationwide primetime address, to reassure them that we will protect them against a Russian invasion and keep our obligation of Article 5 in the NATO treaty true. Because Donald Trump is already doing damage to us. So I went, stopped in Washington, and went to reassure. Think about having to do this, to reassure a NATO ally that the American people and the Republican Party would honor this commitment. As I was leaving, I got a call from the Prime Minister of Sweden. Would I please stop and tell his nation the same thing? This guy said last night in the debate, or 2 nights ago in the debate, he said the reason the campaign to take out Mosul, ISIS in Mosul, where we know they're plotting against the United States, is because Hillary Clinton's running? What message does that send to every world leader and every adversary about our military? What does it say? When 17 intelligence agencies, and he gets briefed now, what they call a presidential daily brief, because he is a potential president, like Hillary Clinton gets briefed, and President I every morning. 17 agencies said that Russia and Putin are directly responsible for the cyber attacks in the United States. What does he say? He says, after being confronted, he says, we have no idea who's doing this. Could be anybody. Right now, in Russia, Putin is maintaining his stability and popularity by the propaganda in Russia arguing that the United States is weak and failed, they don't know what they're doing. What does this play to when he says things like that? Either he is absolutely devoid of any intellectual content when he's saying this, or he's completely dangerous. So folks, look, I'm sorry to get worked up on this, but here's the deal. Here's the deal. We are in a position today, and I'll end with this. We are in a position today. When I got elected as a 29-year-old kid, I was referred to, I had to wait 17 days to be eligible to be sworn in. For real, I did. And I was referred to as the young optimist and the young idealist. I tell you students, without fear of contradiction, I am more optimistic about America's prospects today than any time since the end of World War II. Not because of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because of who we are as a people. No one else is a patch on our genes. We are the most powerful nation in the world. People follow us not because of our power, but the power of our example. That's why we're as strong as we are. China, the EU, no one can compete with us. We are the epicenter of energy for the remainder of this century, not Saudi Arabia or Nigeria, North America. Ladies and gentlemen, America never bows. We never bend. We never yield. We always rebound. We will own the finish line this year and in this century. Have confidence. Thank you.